risk management. So today's the topic, rather we go a little bit deeper in this topic. Credit risk management. So if I ask you a question, how you define credit risk? We discussed in the previous class. So can I ask Mr. Achinta to explain what is credit risk? Achinta?
It's a risk of getting facilities defaulted by the customer.
Yeah. Risk of repayment or get repaid, interest and the loan capital and interest on time, right? So it's by default of customer. So that is the credit risk. So that is in risk profile, the any banks, we have a number of risks. Very first risk is credit risk, which we are focusing very strongly. Another one is liquidity risk. Another one we call market risk. Market risk is 2 types or 3 types. What are the market risk? Market risk can I ask from Indica, Vijay Veerasurya? Indica, what do you mean by market risk? Nimal Ravindran?
Interest rate.
Market rate, very good. Interest rates and
Foreign exchange.
Exchange rate, very good. Another one, commodities. Commodities, market risk. So credit risk, liquidity risk, market risk, and another one is operational risk. So these are the sort of 3 main risks that we are talking about, right? Operational risk is what? We discussed a little bit last one, Mr. Ravindran. So operational risk in financial industry is what? Mr. Ponnambalam, Sivanoganadan. What is operational risk means? Come on, little bit. Try to be interactive because otherwise I will get fed up. Yeah, what is operational risk mean?
How things are done inside the organization.
Yeah, all the things is done in the organizations, like organizational risk, like the risk of fraud. Risk of fraud. ALM. No, sorry, AML. What is AML?
Anti-money laundering.
Terrorist financing. Or there's other one is like other hazards like fire and flood and all. So all these are operational risk. Okay, so this is become the risk profile. What we are going to now do with the credit risk management. So now we go to deeper. I mean, last class also we discussed, but we go a little bit more deeper into credit risk management. So in credit risk management, I would like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to focus our discussion into 5 areas. 3, 4, 5. And in my lecture type, I will not use PowerPoint presentation, but I will try to have more engagement with you. So you also have to participate. So if you really want, if you see how you would like to manage the risk, because on one hand, what you have to understand is we cannot have zero risk. So there's nothing called zero risk in risk management, because it's a risk you have to take because you are doing a business, which is we call, when you know this, financial intermediation. So financial intermediation means, by the way, what is financial intermediation, Mr. Prasanna? Prasanna, how you call financial? What is the definition of financial intermediation? I think we discussed that before. What banks do. What is financial intermediation means?
Providing financial solutions.
Solutions. Okay, there are basically three types of financial intermediation. Can you remember?
Accepting deposit.
Hmm?
Accepting deposit and
Okay.
lending.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So what we do is there are two areas. Number one we call the financial surplus units. Another one is financial deficit units. Surplus units and the deficit unit. So what we do is we mobilize funds from financial surplus units, or we get these funds from financial surplus units, and then we lend this money to financial deficit. So these surplus units could be individuals, could be corporates, could be any other organizations, other banks, central bank or whatever. So they are financial surplus units, and so that means where we get money. And the other side is financial deficit units. So deficit units means deficit unit means that again it could be individual, it could be SMEs, it could be bigger corporates, something like that. So coming back to our financial intermediation discussion, which we have done this, I mean, this is not really credit risk, this is banking. We have understand there are three types of financial intermediation. Number one we call term intermediation. Second one we call the volume intermediation. Third one we call the risk intermediation. Now I would like who will I ask? Mr. Nirmal Raj. Nirmal Raj, can you please tell what do you mean by term intermediation? Katiragama Sara, are you there?
So I didn't hear, sir.
Would you be able to answer what you mean by term intermediation? Have you been in that lecture? Or you forget it?
No, sir. I didn't get sir properly.
Okay, shall we ask Mr. Srilang? Mr. Sirivira, what do you mean by term intermediation? Mr. Sirivira, are you there?
We lend money not more than 1 year.
Not that. Uttala, what do you think? What is term intermediation? Mr. Uttala, are you there? Alahakon? Anyone who would like to answer? But term making intermediate what do you mean by term intermediate?
Lender and matching deposits and lenders.
Between the counterparty agreement.
Ravindran, can you please tell again?
You mean that term of the intermediate, no?
So what I ask is, look here, the job of bank, and normally we call very simply financial intermediation. In Sinhala we call Mulya Ataramadikaranaya. Mulya Ataramadikaranaya. Samai bank main topic. And I don't know the Tamil word, unfortunately, but you might have a good Tamil word for that. Financial intermediation. So financial intermediation means you are intermediating between financial surplus units, financial deficit units. Meaning that you are getting money from financial surplus units, do something here and lend back to the financial deficit. And what we are going to do is three types in banking. එකක් තමයි කාලය වශයෙන් අතරමැදි කරනවා term කියන්නේ කාලය or period or the duration. Other one is we call volume. එහෙම නැත්නම් ප්‍රමාණය වශයෙන් අතරමැදිකරණයට කරනවා ලක් කරනවා. Volume or size intermediation. In other words, size intermediation. Third is risk intermediation. That means අවදානම වශයෙන් අතරමැදිකරණය ලක් කරනවා. So what I ask from you, Utpala, is what do you mean by term intermediation? Utpala or Alahakon? Sorry. Tell me. Karani?
Sorry, sir. No idea, sir, about that.
You forgot? Very nice, you forgot all these things. Shall we ask from Miss Madhuvanti again? Are you there?
Matching different maturities, that mean people are depositing money for different maturities and lending it to different parties in different maturities.
Exactly, I think you're very correct. So like, what you mean by term intermediation is that you mobilize deposits in different terms or different maturities, as you say. Some people would put 1 month fixed deposit. Other entity would put 10 months or 12 months, 1 year fixed deposit. Some would be long term. Some would be put money in current accounts where you don't have a term. Some might put in savings account where the term would be maybe for a longer period. So banks' responsibility is to mobilize money from different terms and intermediate this money, these funds, and then lend it to the different facilities on different terms. Now, let's say, for example, housing loan is quite a longer term. And if it's just loan or SME loan, I would say the medium term. And if it is an LC, would be around 3 months. And if it is a bank loan or something like that, it would be, sorry, bank overdraft, it would be one month, right? So you are intermediating, you are trying to do a middle person's job by getting money from different periods or the maturities, and the other one is lending on the other maturities. So this intermediation function we call term or maturity intermediation. We know this. Okay. Other one is volume or size intermediation, means similar. Like we mobilize deposits on different sizes. It could be 100 rupees savings, or maybe 10,000, 15,000, 100,000, 1 million, 100 million, different sizes here. And then we bundle all the money and we lend also on different sizes. For example, if it is a microfinance loans, we are the volume, the per person's loan is small. SME middle, maybe if you are lending for corporate, amount would be very high. So this is we call it. So this is financial income. The third one,
sir, excuse me. Sir, is it related to CDR, credit deposit ratio?
Utpala, I didn't get the question. What is that?
No, sir. Is it related to CDR? What's the CDR, credit deposit ratio?
Yeah, CDR is something else. Credit to deposit ratio is, yes, like compared to your credit or loans. What is the proportion of your deposit? That is actually very good point for the liquidity. I'm talking here something else. What I'm saying is what bank does. What bank does is collect money from the surplus units and then they lend back to the deficit units. Are you getting Utpala?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Okay, so that is what I'm trying to now tell here is a different way. So the third one we call the risk intermediation. Risk intermediation means where the banks normally mitigate or balance with very important two risk. Now, what is the risk associated with this one? This is liquidity risk, because people who put money to the bank, they want to get the risk there is that once they ask money, the bank would be able to repay that. If bank will not have the opportunity to repay that, then you have the liquidity risk, right? But on the other hand, risk here is, as we said, now we are talking here in detail, credit risk. Credit risk is that a risk that the bank will face, where the bank will not be able to recover the loan with interest on time, right? So please keep that in mind. So that is our way. job, the bank's main job, which is actually not our discussion today. This is I just need for your macroeconomic understanding. Right. Now, credit risk management, there are basically 5 elements you have to focus. The first one is, please write and then we'll try to elaborate. Know your customer. This is the first element of credit risk management. Second one is credit evaluation. Particularly DSCR and working capital. That is the first other one. Okay. Other one is structure. Structure of the facility. Structure of the facility. Other one is what do you call that? Collateral or security. Another one is continuous monitoring. Continuous monitoring. Now monitoring the performance. So we try to elaborate credit risk management in these 5 areas. So this is the thing that you have to understand very, very clearly. What do you mean by credit risk management? Right? Number 1 is know your customers. Know your customer is the foundation for any credit risk management. Other one is credit evaluation process and understanding of this concept of DSCR, which you have done already. Understanding this concept of working capital, which I presume you have done again. I also did say some, but maybe like all of them have already done that. Third one is how we structure the facility. The structure facility that which comes several other things is what would be the interest rates, what would be the tenor, what would be the debt equity, and what would be the interest rate and generally the ROI of the subject, tenor, and then what would be the repayment terms and the maturity. You know, what is the structure of the one? Then of course your collaterals, and then you know tangible, intangible. We discussed a little bit. Another one is monitoring and performance, or rather continuous monitoring. Right. Now we go to the first one, which is know your customer. So please make a note. Please draw this by the way. Take few time. 1 minute and draw. So, know your customer in a broader sense means non-financial analysis. This is financial analysis. And normally this comes with character. So, before you lend, you have to, I mean, this, you know, have you heard this thing called C3's method in credit? Maybe you must have done. What is this 3 C's? Can I ask from somebody? Achinta? What is 3 C's? C method? Veerasuri Indika. What is 3 C's?
It is collateral, character, and customer.
Character and customer is same, no?
Both same. It should be collateral, character, and I'm not remembering the other part.
Anyone can remember?
Should be capacity, right?
Yes, exactly.
Capacity, character, and collateral.
Character, first one. Other one is capacity. Capacity means what? Capacity mean
the serviceability or the repayment.
Okay, capacity can mean one is repayment capacity, repayment ability. Another one is capacity to absorb the debt, debt capacity. Or rather, we are talking about a little bit of debt and equity debt capacity. Another one is collateral. There's another method called Campari. Campari is one of the liquor that you can find, but this is something else. So what is Campari method says? What is C again?
Again,
you have done
character.
this method.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can somebody tell other than Achinta? Can I ask from Mr. Kumara Karunaratna? Kumara? Are you there? Utpala, you want to add?
Sir, is it a character, ability, margin, purpose, amount, repayment, and insurance?
What is this one? What is this one?
Purpose.
Other A?
Amount.
R?
Rate.
Ability.
R for rate.
R repayment, sir.
So ability is repayment ability. Now here R here.
Rate.
Interest rate. I?
Insurance.
Insurance, but the
Or
broader
the collateral.
broader meaning is collateral. So these are some credit appraisal methods. So open up this with your mic, right? So this is credit appraisal method. So I just want to little bit link your current knowledge with this. So here the very important thing here is when we come to the credit non-financial, which is coming from character, and character again comes with know your customer. So this is what we have to understand. So there what very important thing that we are looking is character. It's the repayment history and the discipline. That's repayment history and his general character with discipline. History, normally from where you find the history.
Crib
I mean,
reports.
Crib
reports.
Crib reports.
Crib, right? Or maybe through please write referrals. Sometimes some references are much better than crib. So references and all other, and your discipline also. So this is credit history and the credit. So please write character means credit history, credit discipline, and even other discipline also, like whether he's into too much drinking alcohol, right? So that means it gives a bit of understanding of his ability of spending patterns, or maybe he's into other, what we call that malpractices, like gambling or something like that. So then he's not strong character. So that means whatever that he earned might on the otherwise will spend. Or maybe see in a lavish lifestyle. So lavish lifestyle means sometimes once you have a couple of million of money, so rather than that you invest and you properly balance or properly how you call it, properly use it, you might then use for your car, or maybe your Jeep, or maybe you want to get a new Montero or something like that, but rather not investing. And on the other hand, whether he has a very lavish lifestyle or whether he's a more thrifty person. So all these things, it's very important part of non-financial appraisal. And mind you, I mean, as bankers, this is very, very important thing. Once you talk to the customer, once you engage with the customer, you as bankers should be able to know where he's coming from. What's his style, whether the customer is creditworthy, without even looking to anything on the working. This is completely out, because in my credit decision, actually, I take approximately 60% of my decision based on the customer, particularly when it comes to SMEs. When it comes to SMEs, the customer, because SME is more very much customer or the person, right or wrong, person-oriented lending. So you have to have, so that is where we need to have this relationship management or relationship managers, talk to them and be with them, and to see, like, if you visit to the client's place, by even looking at the client's house or business premises, the way that the client is dressed, where the client is being behaved, you would be able to do that. But again, you will ask me, okay, can you teach how to assess character? Unfortunately, I will not be able to do that, because that is something that you have to get through your experience. So that is where that we need experienced bankers or experienced people, right? And very important point I would like to elaborate here is, in character, is something with that no one-man show. This is very important thing. We discussed this in a little bit. Can Mr. Indika please tell what do you mean by one-man show? What is one-man show in this?
Customer cannot do everything.
Everything means, Indika?
He cannot do his business without other support.
Yeah, other support in the sense that he's the center of decision making, right? So you have to be very careful, because on one hand, you cannot manage, or when it comes to SME, this one-man show is also should be there, because it's that entrepreneur, that owner who drives the business. So theoretically, that is not a bad thing, right? You have to do that. So that must be there. But on the other hand, it should not be hindrances for sustainability. Now, I have seen a situation where once a main owner or the driver of the business, if he is no more or if he is dead, the entire business is supposed to be collapsed, right? So this is very important thing. You always, we normally call that drop dead policy. Please try drop dead policy. Drop dead. What do you mean by drop dead? Kumara, what do you mean by drop dead? What is drop dead means? Or drop dead or dead drop, whatever way you want to call it. What do you mean by that?
There's no any proper succession plan in the business.
Yeah. So now you die. What would happen? No succession, as Sachin said. No succession. If you die today, what would happen to the business? If the owner dies today, what would happen to the business? Whether his kith and kins can do that, or maybe he has a succession plan, as Sachin said, or maybe a proper structure being established. So this is a very, very conscious decision in credit risk management you have to take. So I'm not saying that you should not lend for any one-man shows. No, then you won't be able to engage with SMEs development. And what you have to do is, if you do that, at least try to make some sort of mitigant. So some of the examples for that is, okay, then if you are giving to the main person, why not you get his wife also being part of the facility, or maybe his son, or maybe while you are engaging in the business, which is part of this monitoring the performance. This is very, very important point, which we will come in a later, that you being a banker, it's not only that you give loans, but you continuously monitor, continuously involve, talk to the people, and try to be a little bit of advisory role. Now, my dear students, actually, this is what now in Sri Lanka we lack, right? Unfortunately, I know that you are also in the banks, you have targets, and most of the banks, they have targets, and then unfortunately, we don't have this concept of development banking. Now, for example, like people like Mr. Indika, which you had, and then to a certain extent me. So we came from a background of development banking, right? So development banking is somewhere that you do this, and you consider, you stay engaged with the client on a basis where that you try to be a consultant also to that company in future. You know how the working capital moves. You would be able to, working capital is here, you would be able to tell and advise the company on working capital, right? Or maybe cost cutting or cost reductions, you would be able to tell. I mean, I have lent approximately, I told you once, I have lent approximately around 3,500 enterprises in this country, and I don't know, I mean, I cannot remember mostly, but at the time that I'm doing that, I'm quite hands-on. I knew the business. I was with them. I try to understand. I'm in this relationship manager. So please don't miscalculate the importance of relationship management in credit risk. So this is where you have to stay engaged. So sometimes I know, because of me, some businesses that they have asked, they have invited their children to be part of, and then because of that, the going concern assurance. Some businesses really depending on one person, and I try to, I mean, I know one timber company, right? It's a very, very big timber company somewhere in Akurugiriya. And enormous business. And then if anyone wants to go and ask for timber, that particular person, that Mudalali, knows where exactly you have to go. Now, if they said, I want, let's say 2 inches thick kumuk clear, he know where you should go. He said, okay, sir, you go to that plan and then go to that down. There would be some wood. So can you please? So then he will say the goal and you can find it out. Right? Everything is in his head. If you say, no, I need Kaluvara. So Kaluvara, is something you are not supposed to trade and it is illegal. But he has some stock. He said, okay, sir, but he doesn't trade Kaluvara with the persons who are not be trusted, but very, very trusted few people. He said, okay, you can find it there. If you want mill or whatever, so all this is in head. So then at that time, I was able to convince him on a proper inventory control system and a proper sort of a thing, because in normal Limola that you don't have the system. It's a very basic operation. But the thing is now, and then I was able to involve his son also, who is I think a graduate, and after his graduation he's coming into the field, and then with some IT people, he has developed a very, very basic, not a very, very sophisticated thing, but very basic inventory control system. And you know what had happened after he did that, all other minimum it would go 2 months. Sorry, maximum it will go 2 months. The person was dropped dead. He got a heart attack and he fallen and then collapsed and he was dead. Right. So then, thank God, there was at least a system. Of course, there was a dip in the business because the main man is it's not there. But at least the business was seemingly quite going concerned. The business could recover even with a smaller issue because of the fact that they had that system. So please make sure when it comes to credit risk, because credit risk you cannot talk in isolation. You have to talk credit risk again with the credit appraisal, because credit appraisal and credit risk is hand in hand. If you don't do the appraisal, the risk is high. If you do the appraisal, the risk is less. Remember that information asymmetry discussion that we had in the previous class. Minimize information asymmetry is very, very important, right? So the very important thing is this one-man show, drop-dead policy, or you have a situation to go to the credit history. If you don't have a credit history, then maybe the referral, sometimes referral would be much more stronger than trade. And then discipline again, two types, your general discipline, your general lifestyle, and as well as, I mean, some people, you know, I mean, they are quite eaters and drinkers, but when it comes to financial discipline, they are very good. They're very good. But on the other hand, you can see the vice-versa, people who are having extremely good and very sustainable lifetime, but when it comes to financial discipline, they don't care. So they don't care the installment is due or whatever. It's financial discipline. So this whole thing is very, very important thing in credit risk management. Know who your customer, right? And particularly it is very important if the customer is a subjective material, and customer will be subjective material when it's come to SMEs. But then here, if you are talking about John Keys, if you are talking about Hades, so then this whole story would be something drastically different. But here, when it comes to the physical SME type of people, the know your customers is something different, because you don't have much distinction between the customer and the business, right? So this is number one very important thing. Credit evaluation. Let's go to the credit evaluation, second one. Working capital management. Working capital. What do you mean by working capital? I'm pretty sure you know this better than me. What is working capital? Shall I ask from Mr. Nimal Ravindran? What is working capital, Nimal?
It's related to day-to-day operations.
Okay, it's not Mr. right? I'm sorry, I missed Nimal. Yeah. Miss or Mr. Sorry, I heard female voice.
It's related to the day-to-day operations.
Okay, what is then, you know, working day-to-day operations means what? The money that is required for
financial obligation to pay the credit.
Yeah, day-to-day running of the business. I like that explanation. Day-to-day running of the business. Now, I mean, let's little bit focus. I mean, I think we have done this discussion, but it is 1,000 times good that we again refresh our knowledge. Now, let's say I want to start up a business. Right? I want to start up a business, and then I have built a factory, and I have installed these machines. I have asked few people to come and employ with me, maybe around 5 to 6 people. I got all the electricity and all other water and all the other amenities. So if I have all these, can I start the business? Prasanna, can I start the business?
No, sir. You have to have the day-to-day funds for running the business.
Exactly. So all these we call the capital expenditure. So having all these does not mean that you can start the business. So other than the capital expenditure, maybe you have a vehicle also, the truck or a piece of truck. Now let's say this is a small ice cream or curd manufacturing company, yeah, something like that. I mean, just for our knowledge. So all these physical stuff we call the capital expenditure. But having only capital expenditure, you cannot operate the business. So what you have to do is you have to have extra money, additional money to get the supplies. Now these are your suppliers. You have to pay them, and they have to provide your supplies. So if it is a yogurt company, so these supplies could be milk, or maybe the cups, gelatin or something like that, or any other raw material for that. So other than the setup cost of the business, You have to have a portion of money where you want to pay to the suppliers and get the goods. You can argue no, you can do always on credit. Yes, if you are an established business, yes, you would be able to give a credit period, and then you would be able to give you would be able to get some stuff with for credit. But if you are a new company where you have a challenge of getting, you might need to have adequate cash, adequate funds with you to do that, right? So this is here. So here, other than to this business, you need money for this. Now imagine you paid your money and you get the raw material. And when the raw material is there, so now you use this for manufacturing process, manufacturing yogurt. It could be depending different organization. You have different manufacturing. And while doing manufacturing, you spend a lot of money. Why? For what? Mr. Kumara, Kanakaratna, Kanakaratna. For what you use, what the money will be consumed for you. While you are manufacturing. Madhuvanti? Ms. Madhuvanti, are you there?
So actually, I didn't get the question.
Okay, no, I was just asking, while you are doing the manufacturing, you still need money. Why? Because you have to pay for electricity, you have to pay for the salaries, right? You have to incur all the operational costs. So you have to have money. So what I want to tell is now this is what we are talking about working capital. So other than the initial cost of establishment, you have to keep a portion of money for buying the raw materials, and you have to keep the portion of money for the going concern of the business, because maybe your electricity bill will be due, your rental will be due, your water bill will be due, right? Or maybe, and then of course, if the month end comes, you have to pay for your employees. So you have to have that money. I think it can roll here. So you have to have that money. Then what would happen? You manufacture the goods, and then you sell. You sell these goods. I mean, this is a very simple thing. I mean, it's common sense. But normally, when it's a business, new business, or even an established business to a great extent, you would not be able to get the money today. You sell maybe after 2 weeks or maybe 1 month, you will get the money back. So this is normally you call the working capital cycle. From the day that you purchase raw material to the date after you manufacture and to the date that you receive money for the finished goods, the period that you have to exist with pool of funds, we call the working capital cycle or working capital period. It is extremely important in SME lending that you have to have 100% idea, 100% gauge on the working capital. As I told, so there are in business failures, there are a number of research have been done on business failures, and mind you, my dear students, most businesses are failed not because of anything else, but poor management of working capital. So working capital management is very, very important, right? Okay. So in working capital, there are a few ratios that we are talking about. Please, can you take 2 minutes and write down what are these ratios that we are talking in working capital? Maybe in your financial and ratio calculations, you would be able to do that. Please let me have a couple of answers. Take 2 minutes. Ratios. Can we ask Mr. Indika to come up with the ratios? Indika. What are the ratios that you are learning in working capital? Okay, Madhuvanti has done an answer and she has put into the the chat box. Okay. First one is this side you have what? Creditors. Creditors payable period. Ms. Madhuvanti, what is the how you calculate this ratio? Creditors payable period. And there you have debtors collection period, because those are your debtors. And then here we have the stock turnover or inventory turnover period. Actually, not the current ratio. Current ratio is something else. How you calculate? What do you mean by Madhuvanti? Can you please tell me what do you mean by creditors payable? Madhuvanti, are you there?
The time required to pay the creditors.
Tell me again.
The time required to pay the creditors and finish their liabilities.
Okay, so creditors payable is defined as the number of days that is taking to pay your creditors. Ms. Madhuvanti, do you know how you calculate that?
Cost of funds divided by average creditors into
not cost of funds.
Sorry, cost of capital.
Cost
Sorry,
of
cost
sales.
of
Cost of sales. Cost of sales. Cost of sales divided by
average creditors.
Creditors into 365. Right. So
360.
this is where you get the creditors payment period. Please write if you're not into this. What do you mean by debtors collection period, Hassan? Debtors collection period क्या बताते?
Time taken to pay the debtors.
Once you sell the good, how long will it take to get the
Money back.
Money back.
Get the money, right? So that's we call the debtors collection period. So how to calculate debtors collection period? They are not like this. Sales are the credit sales divided by debtors into 365. So this is debtors collection period. Another one is stock turnover period. What do you mean by stock turnover period, Achinta? Achinta, කොහොමද stock turnover period කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? Mr. Achinta?
The time that takes to convert your stocks into cash?
No, stocks in your raw materials to finished goods.
All right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so please write the stock turnover period means the number of days that that you will take to convert the raw materials to the finished goods. Right? How to calculate that, Prasanna? How to calculate the stock turnover period?
Cost of sales divided by average stocks into 365.
cost of sales of purchasers divided by average stocks into 360. Right. Okay. So this is it. So now what is working capital cycle, by the way? What is working capital cycle?
Stock turnover period plus debtors collection period minus creditors period.
Stock turnover period plus
Debtors collection period
debtors collection period
minus creditors period.
Payment period. Sorry, this was confusing. So stock turnover period, debtors collection period, minus creditors payment period, and then you get the working capital cycle. This is very, very important. So my kind request to all of you, my kind and humble request to all of you, if you try to do a bank facility for SME, could be a hardware shop, could be a manufacturing facility, could be a rice mill, could be a grocery, could be a garment factory, could be any other manufacturing outfit. Always talk to the people and try to understand this pattern. The issue here is what is applicable to grocery, it's not applicable to hardware, which is not completely applicable to a manufacturing outfit. Working capital cycle in a tea factory is completely different of working capital cycle in a fisheries business outfit, and it is completely different of in a rice mill or rice manufacturing plant, right? And if you're manufacturing furniture, the working capital cycle is further different than anything else, right? So depending on the different businesses, your working capital is it's changed. But as bankers, it's very, very important point in credit risk management that as a banker, while you're doing financial, and this is not financial, this is financial analysis, that you have a 100% grasp of working capital. Okay. Last question before we take a short break for tea or coffee. How to calculate DSCR? How to calculate DSCR?
Interest plus capital divided by
DSCR is equal to
capital plus interest divided by profit before interest and depreciation.
Profit before interest and depreciation divided by capital payment and interest payment.
Exactly. DSCR means debt service cover ratio. You might have learned this in your finance. How to do this is PBID
minus tax.
Profit before interest and depreciation, right? You don't have to worry on tax now. You don't have to worry on tax. Just PBID divided by interest and capital. Interest and capital. Why I said you don't have to worry on tax for that? What's the logic? What's the accounting logic of that? Because once you service the loan, only you are paying taxes, unless taxes are top heavy. Like let's say, all the top heavy taxes are also here, will be discounted and then net off those taxes, so you are getting PBID, because tax you pay after you repay the loan. So taxes you don't have to worry. PBID, profit before interest and depreciation, divided by, as you said, loan interest, this loan, and as well as all the accumulated other loans and the capital. Or normally you can say loan installment, current loan, as well as the future loan installment. So what is the normal standard of DSCR, acceptable standard?
1.5 above.
Yeah, depending on companies, 1.5, 1.25, but not less than 1.25. It is times. So 1.5 times is that 1.5 times that your loan can be serviced with the PBID that you are getting. Okay, so this is what credit evaluation we have to see, especially when it's come to the cash flows, the DSCR, and whether it's come to the operations, it is working capital. Particularly, I have to tell working capital, this is the gist of the matter. Most companies that you are, and it has a tacit relationship between the management style, because most companies that they have bad working capital management is due to the management style of the person. So these two will go hand in hand. That's the thing. And mind you, as I told, most businesses fail, not that they didn't have market, not that they didn't have anything else, they did not have proper working capital. So working capital management is extremely must thing that you have to take, right? We will talk the rest of other things after the break. So take around 20 minutes. Now it's almost 3. So be here around 3:25 again, and then we will talk these things, and then little bit we move to the portfolio credit risk management, right? Credit risk in portfolio management. So be here around 20-25 minutes. 25 minutes will be the time, right? And then I'll start at 3:25. Thank you. I'll come back. So we will start the session on structure of the facility, right? So while you are working on this, which is of know your customer, which is a sort of a non-financial side of the credit risk management, and then credit evaluation, which is financial side of the risk management. Another very, very important thing, and most of all, so that could result a little bit to see that the credit risk has been not managed properly. That one thing is that you are not structuring your facility properly, right? Very important thing in structuring the facility, you have to understand one very important thing is gearing structure of a company. What do you mean by gearing? What do you mean by gearing, Anjana? You know this. Gearing kira kiyanne? Anjana? Or maybe we can ask from who? Indika, what is gearing? Gearing means? Who can answer me? What is gearing?
Combination of debt and owner capital.
Yeah, gearing is like, gearing. Can you please write the equation for gearing? Gearing is, okay, what's the amount of debt compared to total capital? This is gearing. So if gearing is high, what does it mean? If gearing is high, what does it mean? The company's risk of repaying the loan will be higher than as of now, because the thing is, company has to pay more loan interest or loan capital because the company is high geared, right? So this is what we have to do. So this gearing, or normally the other way we call this is as debt equity ratio. So debt to equity ratio is very, very important thing in the structure of the facility, right? So structure of the facility, or maybe if you want to give, so you are one of the other determination factor to decide the facility is to debt to equity ratio. So with your experience, what is the, I mean, why you should, I mean, let's say if a project is taking 10 million, what is the risk that you give an entire 10 million to that project? Madhuvanti, what's the risk? If the project is 10 million, if you give 10 million to the project by itself from the bank, what is the risk that you have? What is the risk that you have?
We are lending 100%. The RO is 100. Our rate of advance is 100%. So there may be no interest of the borrower to do the project because he has not invested anything to the project.
Okay, so what is the risk there? I agree with you. What is the risk there?
Default risk.
Yeah, no, what Madhuvanti said was that if there's no buying from the borrower to the project, if the borrower does not have sufficient interest in the project, what is the situation there? That borrower actually, but because it's somebody else's money, right? Anjan, are you with me?
Yes, sir.
So this is very important thing. So I mean, normally if you see facilities that, I mean, particularly when it's come to project finance, the facilities which is having 50-50 or even less in terms of debt. That means 40% for the facility, 60% customer or something like that. So if the total project cost, if the customer's contribution is, or the proportion contribution high, that the risk will be limited or risk will be reducing. Why? I think the Madhuvanti very correctly said, because if you also, as a customer, if you also subscribe to the project, if you subscribe to put your money also, you most likely will not try to withdraw from it. That you want to get hold of it. You want to make the business successful. You want to make that particular venture successful. So it's very important while you are structuring the facility to see that, and particularly this is happening like, the facilities like leases. Right? I mean, I'm not saying that, I mean, leasing business, it's very competitive business. Sometimes you might not be able to, ask equal share, that's fine. But having said that, leasing business is a business where that if you see for any vehicle or any machinery that there's a substantial contribution from the customer, that customer also will take a much more stake, much more interest in the business. So this gearing, keep an eye on the gearing is very, very important in a business, right? So please keep that. So gearing is debt to capital into 100%, 100. Another one is debt equity ratio. So ideally, in idealistic situation, I would not say don't go for more than 70-30. But again, it will be highly dependable. 70-30 means 70 maximum you can go as a debt, 70%, but 30% you always at least around 30% try to get from the customer, right? So then your credit risk reasonably reduced, because customers, as Madhuvanti also said, that customer also feel the gravity, feel the heat of the activity, right? But I'm talking a little bit now different than to this. For any business, please think very, very well and tell me, is debt is expensive or the equity is expensive? Can I have from some Nimal Raj? Nimal Raj, are you there?
Can you repeat the question?
My question is for business, debt or equities are expensive for business?
Equity.
Equity is expensive. Why is that? This is not directly a credit risk question, but this question is very important for you to understand this debt equity discussion. Yeah,
dividend has to pay it, and income taxes.
Okay, income taxes, what's the relationship?
If we enjoying debt, we have to pay interest. So tax deduct from the net profit. So that cap will reduce when we get more debt than equity.
Okay, okay, I get you. So if you have any opportunity, if you are doing a
If,
business, you would
if
like to go for debt or equity.
And
the possibility of the investing the equity for a business purpose, so the borrower can get higher return from that than the interest portion.
Okay, so if you, Anjana, think if you are the borrower, and of course, and imagine that you don't have money to invest. So you have two options. Either you borrow a loan. I think you now as a borrower, right, customer. Either you borrow from the bank or you ask somebody to come and join as an equity partner. Which option you go? If you have given the option. Mr. Anjana?
I didn't get you the question again. Can you please?
My question is, if you are the business person, right? If you are the SME, think that you are the SME. You
Yes.
have two options. One thing is you borrow from the bank, which is loan, which is debt, right? Imagine that you don't have money now, right? So you borrow from the bank. Another option is that you ask your friend to come and invest in the business, or you seek equity financing. So one thing you seek debt finance, another one you seek equity finance. Which one is more expensive?
My option would be the borrow from the bank.
You want to borrow from the bank. Why is that, Puta?
Depending on the situations, actually, based on some businesses, taking partnership is a bit concerned. So, likewise, sorry.
I didn't get you. Nimal, can you please switch off your can you mute yourself so I cannot otherwise hear properly? Yeah, Anjana.
And it's depending on the situation and the business types. Taking a partnership will be sometimes a bit a concern, and it will always share the profits and other benefits also. So due to that,
So you don't like that?
Personally, yes. Personally, I don't like.
Okay. So you go for that. Okay, Rasika. Okay, thank you. Rasika, can you please tell whether debt is expensive or equity is expensive? If you are
So in debt we have to pay a interest, no? So it is a little bit expensive, I think.
Yes. But equity?
It's our own money, so we don't have to pay interest on that.
Okay, so you go for more equity option. Prasanna, what do you think?
Go for debt financing, sir.
Huh?
Go for a debt, not for equity financing.
You don't go for equity financing. Why? What is the logic?
Because if we got a banking facility, we have only to settle the capital and interest. If you go for equity financing, the profit and ownership of the business also.
Exactly, ownership. Yes. So this is very important question. I mean, other than this, that you understand, right? You know, I mean, I'm revolving around this point. Actually, equity is expensive. So Rasika, you have to understand for that. When it's come to loan, yes. Now, what you said is correct. In a loan, you have to repay that interest and capital to the bank. And the disadvantage of a loan is that even though your business is profitable or not, you are obliged to pay the interest rate, and you are obliged to repay your loan. So in there, the loan has a problem, right? So you have to to make the business profitable. And if even you don't make the business profitable, you still have to pay the loan. You cannot say, hey, come on, my business is not profitable, I cannot repay the loan. I mean, now if you sit on the other side of the equation, if you are a banker, you are expected your client to pay irrespective of he makes profits or not, right? So that is the thing. So in that sense, that is a problem. But having said that, once it comes to equity, you don't have to pay. I mean, equity, the return of equity is two types. I mean, one thing is dividends. Return on debt is interest. This is something else, right? I'm trying to tell you this. Interest. Return on equity is dividend. And what else? Dividend and what else? Nimalraj, what else?
Tax.
Capital gains. What do you mean by capital gains, by the way? Can anyone explain me what is capital gains?
Appreciation of the share value.
Yeah, share value or the size of the company, yeah? Net worth of the company. So that means you invest in a business, but then the business is flourishing, business is making profits. So then you will get more accumulated profits, and at the time that you quit the company, that you will get, right. So now considering this, now when it comes to equity, the problem is the good thing is this: in equity you don't have to pay unless the business is making profits. That is very important thing, right? So if the business is loss making, if the business is break even, you don't have to pay for the equity holder. And that is the risk that the equity holder takes on behalf of the money that he is expecting. But having said that, if the business is making super profits, right, not like in interest, not like in debt, that your amount of equity payment is also unlimited. That is what you have to understand. The amount of dividend payment is unlimited. So that means now loan, the point is, even though the loan interest has to pay mandatory, whether the business is making profit or not, but when it's come to the loan, what you have to understand, or equity, you have to understand is there's no limit. If you are getting 100 million or 100,000, you have to pay equity based on that 100,000. Sorry, dividend. Maybe like, let's say you're paying 50% of the other part. If you are making 50 million rupees profit, you have to give the 50 million, 100 million, something like that. So in that context, dividend amount is, you don't have a cap. You don't have a cap. So there's no limit. So theoretically, I will go with the fact, then if you really think on the expensiveness of debt or equity to a business, equity is very expensive. And on the other hand, now your equity holder, now somebody told, I think Prasanna or someone, I cannot remember, that you are inviting the person to be the owner of the business. No sooner you subscribe to equity, you are having the ownership also. So once you are the owner of the business, so at that time, that if that particular person wants to quit from the business, you have to repay the capital gains. And this is also a big amount. But you have to understand, paying capital gains is not always required. Capital gains can be, it's only manifest at the time that he or she quitting from the business, but overall, equity is very expensive, right? So keep that in mind once you have this discussion. So this is something else which is not really credit risk management. But if any situation, don't think credit is expensive. The problem of the credit is always like, have to pay whether it is successful or not. But what is really required is important is that you have to pay it either it's successful or not, right? Okay, coming back to the structure of the facility. Number one is you have to think on the gearing. So the lower the gearing is better, higher the gearing is the risk. Lower the gearing means that the customer's contribution is there. So then the ability of or the vulnerability of not paying the loan is less, and if the gearing is higher, that is very important. Another one is interest rate. Right, interest rate also is very important. So structuring the facility means that if the customer is risky in different other ways, you have to make sure that that risk is compensated with return, right? So please write interest rate or the return or ROI or whatever the way you call it should be compensated the risk profile. Meaning, if the customer is high risk customer due to whatever reason, the rate that you are charging it also have to be high. So that is where in portfolio risk management that you have internal risk classification of your portfolio. There could be AAA, AA, A, B, and C, or whatever that you have to have. If your client is a AAA risk rated company, so then you can reduce the interest rate. And what is the relationship between risk and return, Mr. Ravindran? Ravindran, Himal? What is the relationship between risk and return?
High return, high risk, high return.
Higher the risk, higher the risk, higher the return, right? So higher the risk, higher the return. So that means if you want to have higher risk, the return is high, right? So the relationship between risk and return is like this. This is risk, this is return, something like that. By the way, what is this? What is this? Can anybody tell me what is this? Why I did not start from zero?
There is a risk-free return as well.
Very good. What is the risk-free return?
Treasury bills.
Yeah, very good. So this is treasury bill rate. Treasury bill rate, which we call the risk-free return. Why Madhuvanti treasury bill is considered as risk-free? Why treasury bill is considered as risk-free?
It's from the government.
Okay, so why government is so credit worthy? Why lending to the government we consider as less risky?
No, actually, it's not considered as less risky because the country risk should be considered. But normally we say treasury bills are risk-free.
Yeah, what is the logic there?
So government can print money anytime and pay.
Okay, that is exactly the point, right? So if you invest now, of course, now recently also now said government is printing money at rate, right? So if it is a private enterprise or private bank or something like that, once you put your money, you might not recover it if the bank is if the bank is what you call it insolvency position or bankruptcy or something like that, right? So that's the situation. But once normally what the idea is, as Rasika was correct, he said that if you lend to a state, even though the state doesn't have anything or state doesn't have any means, state still can print the money and lend it to you, right? Or give back to you. So that is where we consider treasury bill rate is the most serious. But again, you have to ask a question, even though that is academically or theoretically correct, you have to ask the question whether it makes sense. Now you can see Sri Lanka is now printing money. There are a lot of articles in the press that we have printed almost 10 billion rupees worth of money. Now, what do you think would happen to the economy? Mr. Srilal, what do you think? What would happen to the economy by excessive printing of money?
Inflation will go up.
inflation will go up. Yeah, exactly. Why Sri, and what is the relationship? Or Mr. Katiraka Ramasara, you want to tell something?
Our rupees value decrease.
Yeah. So what is happening here is this I mean something else. So you
without
have
products,
goods and services here, and there's all your money supply should be equivalent to this. So that means with the money supply, you would be able to you'll be able to get the goods and services, and then you have a price. But once if you don't increase your goods and services, and goods and services would be here, or you just artificially increase the money supply, what would happen is the money supply is so much, but the goods and services remain not change. Goods and services mean the productivity is not changed in the country, but you have a lot of money, so all money being poured to purchase this amount of goods and services. So what is happening then is it will lead to an inflationary situation. And now we can see that heat is coming. Now you can see the gas is increased. You will hear again that now you already saw the petrol increase. You will hear the increase of the milk food. You will hear increase of a lot of things. And as a result, what would happen is that inflation will so money printing is, I mean, central bank prints money always, it's fine, but then we are talking money printing, we are talking about excessive money printing. Money printing which will happen individually, not considering the country's productivity, will be a problem. So now in Sri Lanka, we have a situation, we don't do anything to it. So by the way, if I ask a question, which is a more generalistic question, to increase the productivity, what do you have to do? Because we are trying to only address money printing one arm, and other arm is not there. So if the productivity, if the country wants to increase the productivity, what you have to do? Tell me something you have to do here.
We have to produce more goods and services.
To produce goods and services, what you have to do?
Demand decrease.
How to increase countries?
Start new business. Start in new businesses.
Yeah. So how to increase countries' productivity, as Rasika said, you have to do a lot of structural changes. So you have to make sure the entrepreneurship in place. You have to see new factories being opened. You have to make sure that the new opportunities being opened. You have to make sure that new investments, FDIs should come. You have to make sure all these things, you have to make sure, and you have to make sure the people increase their productivity, not just money, increasing money with increasing of productivity. Because if you just lose the balance here, then there will be a problem. Now in Sri Lanka, now we are in verge of losing this balance because government printing money but not addressing this. And of course, there are a lot of problems in the productivity now because of, I mean, right or wrong, because of the agriculture sector issue with the fertilizer. Our productivity is stagnated or even going down. So while you are having that, but on the other hand, increasing the money, meaning that then inflation, and this inflation will be killer for the poor communities. I mean, even like middle class, like you and me, we will also find very difficult to survive in future. But definitely when it comes to the poor class, it is further, they are having further problems of surviving. Okay, so coming back to this, so this is the risk and return, and this is this equation, right? So I just wanted to give some information here. So here, what you have to understand is when it comes to structuring, you have to consider the interest rate or ROI. Another one is the tenor. You know this. I mean, this is nothing rocket science. So normally the general understanding is if it is short, it normally we call, I mean, I told this once, asset and liability matching. This is very important. If the facility is to finance long-term asset, then you can consider to keep the repayment period a little bit longer term. And if it is for medium term, if it is for like SME loan or a lease or whatever, where the asset or what that you use it for medium term, it can be a medium term, but definitely if it is short term, then it has to be short term. So what you have to, what you not to do is that asset and liability mismatching. So that means you are giving asset for a longer term, or the facility will be invested in an asset which is of longer term, but then you have a short maturity. So then you don't have sufficient cash flows generated from that asset, right? Generated from that asset to repay the loan. And I would like here, when you have to structure the facility, you have to make sure that facility or the bank loan goes to the purpose it was meant, right? You have to put cash to the business operation, particularly in SME sector, where cash will generate and enough to repay the loan. This is very, very important. So you have to make sure is that you have to put money to a business, to a venture, to an asset where the money will be generated by that itself, right? So keep that also in mind. So grace periods are also here. What do you mean by a grace period? How you define a grace period? Utpala, what is grace period means?
Where the borrower has to service the interest only during that period.
Only the interest and the capital will be due afterwards. So what sort of facilities that you should have grace period?
For construction projects, startups.
For construction projects, yes. Why, Anjana?
Because the business construction period will be for a considerable period, so the customer will start the business operation or the production for after the some time period. Generating income will be
okay. Yes, I understood. Because if it is a construction project, it is that the customer or the business will generate profit after you do after the construction is completed, like let's say rental income or something like that. So in that situation, yes, that you have to make sure that is there. Another one is agricultural projects, right? If it is for agriculture, particularly cultivation of perennial crops like tea or cinnamon or something like that. I mean, even 6 months might not require, might be shorter, but yes, so you have to have a grace period. So that is one. And then on the other hand, that you can again structure a little bit of repayment tenor, and so please write tenor as well as the structuring of repayment. So sometimes it is for agriculture, like with khanda, in the season. So you can first you can see the interest payment and then bullet interest and capital, and interest bullet capital at the time that you are having that you are having the situation where that you have to pay. So normally those things also would part of the structure of the facility, right? So then bullet payments and then giving appropriate grace period. But you also have to understand that that it has to be very profitable to the business, and then you are not manipulating the grace periods, because otherwise enjoying the grace periods, enjoying these current moratoriums, the client will be used to complacency. By the way, just asking now, since we are having this moratorium, what do you mean by moratorium? What you are doing in moratorium? What do you mean by moratorium? Rasika, what is moratorium means?
So we put off the paying of the loan rental.
Yeah, so we freeze. Moratorium is we freeze the loan, right? So that means you don't have to pay interest, you don't have to pay capital. We freeze it. So So grace period is we freeze the capital, but interest has to be paid, right? But when it comes to moratorium, both interest and the capital we freeze. What is the cost of moratorium to us as a bank?
The cost of funds.
What we call that cost in economics or finance? Yeah, Kumara?
I think turnover is the problem most.
What do you mean by turnover, Kumara?
If customer not paying interest and capital regularly, when we are giving moratorium, but that it will affect to the bank turnover, because we don't have funds to lend again. No.
Exactly. Yes. So that's very, very important point. So that we call opportunity cost of capital. Opportunity cost of capital, because because the thing is, because that capital and interest is stuck somewhere, it will not come to us. Unfortunately, we are having, I think that we're having even third moratorium, and now the central bank wanted to increase the moratorium for the people. Having moratorium for a shorter period is okay, like a tsunami or something like that, it's fine. But having a longer term moratorium, what could be the consequences? Having a longer term moratorium, so that means the bank has lent, but capital and interest, or the money has been not recovered for us. So it's a huge opportunity cost. Would we have been using this money for something else? Or simply like, would we have locked this money in a treasury bill? We would at least get 4%, 5% for that period, right? So do not think the moratoriums are good for the banks. Moratorium for a shorter period, it's fine. But generally, moratoriums are very much disadvantage to the financial organization, because the ability of you to earn is greatly deprived. And I know in some of the banks and finance companies, particularly finance companies, a reasonable portion of their portfolios are in moratorium. So that is not that good. That's the thing. It is not that good, because that you are in moratorium means that you are not getting money. And what is the other problem of moratorium in terms of credit risk?
Liquidity issues.
What is that, Anjana?
Liquidity issue.
What do you mean by that?
Because the capital is not repaid to the bank, and there might be a problem for the liquidity of the bank.
Yeah, that's what previously also Kumar also said, the liquidity of the bank, or the opportunity cost and the liquidity. But other than that, what is the problem of moratorium?
Cash flow decreases.
Okay, yes, to the bank, but in terms of credit discipline, what could happen from customer side? What is happening? So that is my main knowledge, because customers are also becoming what? Complacent. Right? Customers are also becoming complacent. I have seen this, because even sometimes the customers would be able to pay, but they request and they apply the moratorium, and then they don't pay. And then once you go into this habit for more than 3 months of not paying the loan, that will be habitual for you. And sometimes, even though now you have money, you tend not to pay. So that is my main problem. I mean, this moratorium, impact of moratorium to credit risk is enormous. It's more than that you think, right? Because on one hand, yes, opportunity cost of funds. Secondly, the liquidity issue. Thirdly, the behavioral issue. Because the customer is not used to pay. Customer is also, now it is something like that you are in sedation. Then, I mean, you are alcoholic, right? Once you are in alcohol, you don't know what is happening. You are in a different level, different world. And then once the reality comes, then you know what the situation. So the moratorium, you cannot keep on. So that is why I really oppose this. I mean, yes, I know. I mean, with the COVID and all other, there are a lot of problems. There are a lot of problems in the supply side and the demand side. There are big shocks. But having said that, all these shocks are having, you have to manage it, because otherwise what would happen is that the customer will will be insedate, and customer will not be able to pay, or even customer is willing to pay. Customer is, I would say, what I would say that might not have a proper discipline to pay the loans, right? So that is the thing. So
the customer will take the opportunity for the other commitments.
Yes,
also.
yes, exactly. Spot on, Anjana. So what is that all other opportunities will come, all other requirements will come to the customers, and then customer will make sure that he or she will pay them and then pay our loan last. And then if you go into that thing to more habitual, what is happening is that we are having a big problem in long run, right? Okay. So yes, the debt equity, gearing, the interest rate, appropriate pricing, appropriate tenor, and other one is that what I said is when it comes to the structure, you have to think on the repayment ability and all other. So these are the other things that you have to take consideration. Okay, collateral. I think it's not a major one, so you know what you mean by collateral. But again, I told last class, do not ever think that you can really recover the loan with collateral. No, that is not going to happen, because in Sri Lanka's law, the debt equity, it's very much so. Sorry, not debt equity, debt recovery law is very much so. It's to the more customer friendly or the consumer friendly. So it's very difficult. It's even less than 10%. If you see in the Sri Lankan banking sector, that the loans been recovered through selling of assets. But I'm not talking about leases. Leases were excluded from the research, but selling of property, selling of immovable property. So collateral again is, I would say, a moral bond. Other than that, do not ever think. So do not, for any loan, but my personal experience is, do not go in collateral basis. Have collateral, that's okay. Have that moral obligation, but no, do not ever give any loan if you cannot establish the cash flow, right? Don't ever think, no, the loan is 1 million, but we are having a 5 million, 6 million worth of property, and then give the loan. No. See, it is simple as that you cannot get recovered if the loan is becoming NPL. So that is where the thing is come to collateral. Okay, tangible and intangible. So tangible collaterals are what you can touch and feel. It could be again, and it could further goes to movable and immovable. Movable and immovable. And what are the intangible collaterals? Give example. I mean, commonly used intangible collateral.
Life insurance policies.
Okay, life insurance policy.
Goodwill.
Okay, goodwill, but you don't keep this as a collateral.
Corporate guarantees.
Guarantees, corporate or whatever, the personal guarantees are intangible collateral. Again, that is not tangible, it is intangible, and it is again goes with the customer's moral obligation, because some people do not want to be in crib. They want to be in business, they want to be blacklisted in the crib. So that is what things. It's all moral thing, right? Okay. We are coming to a last part of our session today of monitoring and evaluation. Monitoring and monitoring the performance. This is, I would say, predominantly important in SME finance, right? Which we call relationship management. And I could see that most businesses or most banks or most managers are quite poor in this, right? Now, if I may ask, Prasanna, what is your clientele in terms of numbers in your portfolio? How many clients do you have?
About 1,000.
1,000, very good. What's your portfolio?
Nearly Nearly 1 billion.
1 billion, okay. Mr. Srilal, what is your clientele? Mr. Srilal, are you there?
Yes, sir.
What is your number of clients?
Actually, around 500, 600.
Okay, right. Hasika, what about you?
Sir, maybe around 500, sir.
Maybe around 500. Utpala? Utpala, are you there?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, what's your client base? Number of clients?
Around 500, sir.
Okay. Mr. Siva Loganathan?
I'm working in a department, centralized department.
You don't have your own client base, right?
Yeah.
Anjana?
Altogether, sir, it's liability and assets both 3.7 billion. Clientele about 4,000 to 5,000 around in the branch. Yeah.
In the branch itself, right? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, in the branch level, sometimes it would be difficult. I can understand, or in the regional manager, regionally also it's difficult. But again, what you have to do is that, particularly if you are managing your clients or managing your relationship, you should know of your clients. This is very, very important. You should know. You should know in that means, like, it is good. I mean, sometimes you can argue. I mean, sometimes I understand. I mean, if you have 4,000 clients and you have 1,000 clients, if you have 400, 400, 700 and of these facilities, like how you can, personally deal or personally remember. I know it's a challenging thing. But having said that, try to at least identify a few of your clients and try to develop a good professional relationship. It's always you need. I mean, if you have some time to visit this, I know you guys are busy. You have other day-to-day work. You have a lot of paperwork. You have a lot of meetings to attend and whatnot. I am very well aware of that, no doubt. But it's better to go to the field, try to talk to them, because talking to them would then get these ideas and see, because this is very, very important in credit risk management. And if you are in a high-ranking office, now let's say I'm a board member of SME Finance. I'm in the board and I'm chairing the credit committee of the institute. But I cannot do. I mean, there are approximately around 2,000 people in the organization who's reporting to me, and on top of that, each people would have a client, and all of this is difficult. But here, even sometimes at a board level, that I would also like to go and visit to the client and to see and to talk. And when I was at NDB before, I made sure that at least within 3 months, I always touch base my client base, even a phone call, right? Maybe physical visit might be too optimistic to do, but it's difficult. But at least the main clients to client that you see your potential, see some issues, good and bad both, right? You always have that personal issue. So always you have to give a comfort. If the client has a problem, you just client can speak to you, and then you would be able to do. So client would coming to a situation, you have to develop a rapport, you have to develop a relationship where that client always talk to you and consult you for this better thing. And that is actually one of the very important thing in credit growth also. Most of the clients that I have, that I know, that in my previous career, now I'm a little bit on a different career, but in previous career, that they asked me before going to any other bank. They asked me before going to any other facility, sir, what's happening, sir, we want to do that and all of that. And sometimes I was also advising them, hey, look here, why not you to do that? Why not you expand that? Why not you have a lease? So it's a reciprocal relationship. And that is, I would say, other than all these things, these are very academic, I would say, but this is where that you minimize the credit risk. That you have very professional and intimate relationship, right? But what I said, I mean, don't forget this fact, professional relationship. What do you mean by professional relationship is this? I will try to illustrate in an example. So this is you as a banker, and this is the client. This is the client. So this client could be a micro client, SME client, bigger client or a bigger corporate, something. I mean, it doesn't matter. As professionals, you always have to understand there is this wall between, unseen wall between you and the client. Unseen wall between you and the client. And then there's this distance. This okay. As banker, you can decide in this line where you stand. That means if the client is there, whether you stand a little bit distance, or you would like to be closer to the client, or even more closer to manage the relationship. But what you should never do in professional life in this one is cross this line. Right? This is very, very important thing, right? You manage, you can decide whether you want to be here, here, or here, or here even. I don't mind, but don't do this. Right? So always please make sure. So I mean, you know what I'm meaning. Like always be very professional in dealing, right? So there's a general saying, don't be friendly with clients. Be friendly with clients, but don't make them friends. Right? So, but don't take it in that bad context. But what I said is, you can be very friendly with clients. Be very friendly. Be very approachable. Be very humble. But before you want to make them as your friends, you have to be very careful, right? So sometimes when it's come to the socializing aspects, all other as a bank, as professional, but be careful, right? I'm not saying, I mean, if you have some situation where you have a cocktail party where you would like to have a drink with them, client, it's fine. But I mean, it's always you gauge it, right? I mean, I'm not a person who would say right or wrong, what is good or what is wrong. You all are experienced bankers, you all are quite experienced individuals, so you know how to manage that. But what I want to tell is, managing this relationship is very important, right? And I know a lot of instances, and maybe you also know, and some of the times you also been, some of your friends, the colleagues also know, people who have crossed this boundary, right, have a lot of problems, right? You know, accepting personal favors or accepting gift. I mean, gift in the sense, okay, if they want to, send a cake or something like that, that's fine, right? So that is not a big deal. Or maybe something that they want to give it to our or something, that's also fine. But accepting very other gift, right? Or maybe bribes and all other. I mean, if any customer try to bribe you for a loan, means definitely it will go for bad. Because why? Because if a genuine, after you are approving a big facility, I mean, I'm also having this situation. So I mean, after approving big facility, client is sending a cake. Everybody in the branch, you eat that. That's fine. That's a different thing. But other than that, please make sure that you don't do that, because that would make your relationship much more complicated in future, right? So very important is that you continue monitoring of the facility, right? Monitoring means, I'm not saying, I mean, it's again up to you, because you also busy people. You cannot visit on every week or every month. I mean, then you don't have much time to do any other work. It's not like that. But follow up with the client, follow up with the facility, be with the client, develop a relationship which is much more professional with the client, and that will make sure that you will have a very, very good relationship with the client, right? So I think with that we will stop for today. But as I told, I don't want to intend for a long lecture, because sometimes it will be very difficult for me also to do that. And the next one, we try to little bit go into portfolio risk management section, where I would like to little bit talk about the risk, and again, like systemic risk and systemic risk and all. And a little bit that will be a bit of a technical session, right? This is more practical, you know that, and then all other. And then try to, if possible, we try to see some sums also we can try to understand. I mean, this is not really will require you for banking day-to-day things, but for your knowledge. And then because I promised that I go a little bit on portfolio risk management. So then we will work on that, right? So unless you have any question, we can adjourn the class now. Any question, Rasika?
Sir, I have a personal question regarding this inflation. Do you think, sir, that because they are printing money, that's the reason this normal day-to-day stuff is increasing in price? Or is it due to this COVID situation?
Normal day-to-day, I mean, quick answer is normal day-to-day price increase happening in two ways. Number one is because of the dollar crisis, our currency is depreciating now, right? So even though the government or the central bank said it's 200 or whatever, you go and find in the market where you can find $1 for 200, you can see nowhere, right? So that means, I mean, my personal gauge is 240 or 260 even, sometimes rupee to dollar rate. So meaning when you imported goods would be very expensive to have. So that is one contributor to inflation, right? So if with the import-oriented economy, the imported goods are expensive, becoming expensive because of the exchange rate. So that's the one aspect. Another aspect is, yes, they have not increased the productivity. They have not increased the efficiency of the economy, but we print money. So you see why we print money is that number one is that that you remember that for the COVID the government has given the handouts 5,000 and the recent one is I think 2,000. So from where we find those money? Those money are the printed money that government they give. So what would happen? People have money, but the goods and services are limited. Now, other one is now teachers want a salary increase. Okay, I'm not arguing that, but teachers want salary increase. So how the salary increase will give? Print money and give. What would happen? What would happen? The goods and services would remain as it is, and then it would go for and you know, teachers are a huge base of public service, right? So in that sense,
sir, I think bankers also contribute for that inflation. They are giving massive personal loans, credit cards, artificial money.
Artificial money, exactly, and particularly the loans that you are giving for consumption. If any loan, as Mr. Kumar said, if you are giving for consumption, because now this credit card, because of credit card, whole the consumption pattern is now distorted. Now, normally we call something called purchasing power, you know, purchasing power. So now anybody's purchasing power should be proportionate to the income, right? Now, if I have 100,000 salary, my purchasing power would depend on my 100,000 salary. If you have 50,000 salary, your purchasing power will be a correlation of that. If someone else's salary is 500,000, so that his purchasing power is something like that. But now what is happening is, if as Kumara very correctly said, if now I am a person who is having 100,000 salary, but if I am having a huge credit card, which is of course 2 million. So what is happening there is that my purchasing power artificially increasing. Not that I am getting the income, but through the credit card. So if it is artificial increase, so theoretically what I mean, I can have a purchasing power of a person who's having 2 million worth of income. And then I go, and then of course what would happen is that I might not be able to repay that, and I will be accumulated, and I'm going to the debt trap of credit card. I mean, how many of you are in debt trap of credit card? I know very you know, professional people who have been having a lot of issues with the credit card because they cannot manage it, because they overused it. There could be some situations where you have to overuse it, maybe some sudden expenses and all of that, or whatever. That's a different thing. I mean, to talk to you and see like how unprofessional and how you know, non-prudent that you are using your own credit card. I mean, you are the bankers. You are supposed to be much more trained in financial discipline. And if you are like that, what about others? answer to your question, Rasika and Kumara, that's the thing. So you, I mean, you in the sense, everybody who encourage consumption, excess consumption. Consumption is important to economy. To economy to run, you have to consume. It's that, I mean, being very stingy is not good, also good. But on the other hand, you are overly putting sugar to the system. If over sugar means you're ending up in diabetes.
Thank you, sir.
Any question you want to ask generally? Which I really don't want to comment these days, but since it's a class and it's an academic purpose, I would be able to comment. Okay, so with that, we will adjourn the class. So next class, we will go into portfolio theory and we will be able to finish this session. So I don't know, please get hold of Mr. Menaka on the other aspect of your exam and all of that. So then maybe let's see if you have time, we can discuss a bit on that. Right, so with that, I will stop the class. Thank you very much. And then we will meet next week. Okay, take care.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.